If you want to stay in the same situation, then continue doing what you're doing.
And you guys can get on board and go down this 4-lane highway and just rock it out, and you don't have to have a decade of learning process.
Meet people where they are. If you want to have all types of clients, be a Rubik's Cube. Meet them where they want to be met.
We have to know our numbers. We have to know how much we want, and then how many deals do I have to close to make that a reality?
What I want to do over the next half hour or so is give you clarity on the items that really are going to generate money for you and allow you to do the things you want to do.
So if you're not currently being coached by the people in the industry that are doing it at the highest level, then you're working too hard to get there.
This is the Next Level Loan Officers Podcast with Kenneth Travis and Sean Zalmanoff.
Good morning, y'all. Sean Zalmanoff here with my friend Kenneth Travis. Welcome all Next Level Loan Officers, and welcome Kristin Messerli. How are you today?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Kristin, so you run an awesome organization called Cultural Outreach. Please tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so we help businesses with reaching millennials and multicultural segments. We do that through training, PR, and marketing.
So we were talking a little before the podcast, and you were telling us that your dad ran a mortgage business and you were one of 3 people on the planet who grew up wanting to be a loan officer. So tell us more about that and how you ended up not becoming one.
Yeah. I was 7 years old, I think, when my dad started his business, and I would always, file paperwork and just plan on taking over the business. And that did not happen. But I entered social work instead, which is a weird direction to take, but it really taught me a lot about connecting with people across cultures and across generations. And I realized how incredibly important it is to learn some of the skills around developing a network in a lot of underserved and untapped areas. So kind of bridged the gap ultimately in the mortgage industry, and developed a company around how we develop those community relationships and marketing with social impact that's really effective in reaching the next generation of buyers.
So you tried to get out of the mortgage business, but it pulled you back. Oh.
Yeah, exactly. Like it does for everyone, I think.
Yeah, it does do that for us. So a couple of things that you focus on are, being a recognized leader and connecting with millennials. So tell us, I know that one of the things that we hear in the mortgage business often is that connecting with millennials is different than connecting with anybody else. So, for the loan officers on here and other people running successful mortgage businesses, I think that millennials get a bad rap. And tell us a little more about how your education works and teaching people to connect with them and really what works to have the best success.
Yeah, so I do think millennials get a bad rap, and I think a lot of that, with any generation and any culture, there's differences that take a while to understand. So I always start by talking through some of the core values of the millennial generation and even Generation Z, which is the one following. And I think that provides a lot of context for how you can approach reaching this generation. But one is this value for transparency and education. This generation has grown up or become adults either during or right after the financial crisis. And so we really value having as much information as possible, not to mention the fact that we've grown up with instant access to information at our fingertips with technology and the internet. And so we don't just take things at face value. The other thing about that is that we are very skeptical of salespeople generally. So it's so important that you are leading with education and transparency, and that your marketing is really all about adding value to the consumer. That's probably the number one thing. The number 2 area that I would look at is the channels of communication. So how you are communicating on social media and how you're what kind of involvement you have in your community as well. Millennials and Gen Z are way more likely to work with companies that identify with a cause or some kind of social impact. So it's really important that you are communicating your impact in your community, like you are helping families build wealth and get into homes, and then you're also, you know, involved in your community in these ways, and kind of authentically communicating that through your marketing and customer experience is really important.
So the communication on social media. So millennials want to see the involvement in the community. They want to see a bigger message than, hey, we're great, we can do your mortgage for you, we just have a product or service to offer.
Yeah, I mean, everyone says they're great, you know, and everyone maybe is great, but the way you differentiate yourself with this community and this generation is, one, looking at how you are authentically engaging. There's still so much research out there about how millennials really want the personal relationship. Yes, technology is important. Yes, having an efficient process is important, but you really need to connect on that authentic personal level. So, I mean, when we look at like social media best practices, for instance, it's about how you're communicating your who you are as a person, not necessarily what product you have or what rates are. You know, it's really important that you're connecting on that personal level.
So how do you communicate on a personal level when some people don't want to pick up the phone and talk to you very much?
Yeah, so we do have a hard time picking up the phone. We have a little bit of phone anxiety. I mean, we have just grown up in a world where texting is the way to communicate. And I think that's one, use text as a channel to communicate in other ways. So once if you text and say, hey, are you free for a phone call right now? You're much more likely to get someone that is ready then to take your phone call. And, or say, hey, I just sent you this email. You text that over, then they check their email. But definitely text has to be a central part of your communication. And I think, there's some other ways you can develop the relationship, but you can't get rid of texting. But in addition to texting, definitely use video and in-person relationships as much as possible. When I bought a home a few years ago, my loan officer had texted most of the time, and I just felt very disconnected. And when you're making the biggest financial decision of your life, and you're choosing your loan officer to work with you, you're choosing them out of everybody else. And so you want them to realize like they're in your inner circle at that point. And so, you're kind of part of the family. And I think that having some kind of even sending over short videos that explain something. Let's say your borrower sends you a question about something, then you can send a video response saying, hey, let me talk through this. A few things that you can't do before you close on the loan are X, Y, and Z, and this is why. And that takes you 30 seconds, maybe 5 minutes max to do, and adds that personal connection. But also, using Zoom or different kind of web meetings are a great way to build that connection without forcing them to come into your office.
Yeah, that last part. So interesting that you say that, because, I find even myself at my older age, reaching out to people that are even older than me that don't know what Ring Central is or Zoom or any of those technologies. And it's so normal for us. And so that's a good that's a good perspective, right, to relate to the millennial market. So what I hear you say, Kristin, is like the millennial market really wants education. They want information. They want to use technology. And at the same time, it sounds like how important it is to them to be loved and respected and appreciated. I mean, I'm seeing some of that, but like how much of that? Because it seems like that it's not that we're catering to them, because they need it. It's just their way of being. It's like it's who they are to the core based on how they grew up and what was available to them. So how much of the love and respect and appreciation goes into that?
And so, I mean, the love, respect, and communication and authenticity is really technology should just be encouraging all of that. Technology should empower that relationship. So if technology is detracting from it, you're probably losing a lot of opportunities with millennials, because someone else is always going to be more efficient than you. Someone's always going to have a lower rate than you, but you are competitive in being that relationship and being known as someone who's trusted in the community. So that's why, we look at underserved markets and millennials, next gen consumers, kind of all in similar ways, where if you build this brand as someone who, yes, I can text you with a question, I know that you're going to be real with me about what's best for me and have my back as a consumer, that takes that kind of personal relationship and level of respect to have. And that does take a little bit of time as well. So that's why, I always talk about your marketing strategy should not include, and people will disagree, and it very much depends on your market, but it shouldn't include a sales strategy. Your sales strategy is about being an authentic, well-known person in your community. And so building out a lot of content that is education focused and then getting that out in your community through social media, but also through showing up at sponsoring young professional organization events and showing up places so that you are networking in person and online with that kind of authentic engagement is you're then using technology to your advantage.
Kristin, I couldn't agree with you more. Like when you try to sell somebody something, they don't want to buy it. When you create value for people and educate them, they can be your client for life. And that's really where you earn it. Like you're saying, I mean, somebody can always be an eighth of a point cheap or provide something else, but it's about being that trusted partner. And I have to tell you, I think you just gave me $1 million idea. So we use BombBomb a lot, and there's many other video communication things that you can use, but BombBomb's pretty simple to use and record. And so we use that a lot throughout the process of doing the loan, but that would be such a powerful tool to use on an introduction. And it's something that you can record right from your phone. So if somebody did text me and I was like, hey, I was just thinking about you, and, thought I'd record this video and send it to you. I mean, that probably takes 12 seconds longer than it does to actually type the text message. And so what a fantastic idea to actually be talking to somebody without picking up the phone and talking to somebody, but yet you're going to be able to see that they've read the message and they're going to hear you differently than if you just typed it out. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that so this is really scalable. If you can do an intro message that is customized, but it's something you do regularly, then direct people from that to maybe your YouTube page where you have a bunch of videos that are educational on the process. You can direct them to a first-time homebuyer guide, something that says like, hey, I would love to be your guide through this process, and here's a resource for you, and then let's follow up, And so that tells me I don't want to shop anywhere else. Like, you are the one that's going to be my advisor through this. And I will say, when I sold my home a couple years ago, and I kind of put out there like, hey, looking for a real estate agent, or can't remember how maybe it was from Zillow, but I had so many phone calls and I did not answer a single one of them. But then I got a couple text messages and I would kind of explore that. But if I had received a text message with a video, that allows me to make that connection that stands out from everybody else. And I did interview a millennial real estate agent once who talked about how he had some kind of, he'd received a video follow-up from a loan officer he had met with, and it was just saying, hey, that was a great conversation with you, wanted to just follow up with you on these 2 items or whatever it was. And he said that just stood out so much to him, and it helped develop that connection. So yeah, I think that's a great idea. Fantastic.
KT, we can implement this for ourselves and all of our people this afternoon.
Oh yeah. I think that it's genius. It's a good eye opener as well, man. Because I think that like we sometimes in this business, in this industry, forget to do the simple things, and it's relating. And I love the word that you used, authentic. It's just being real with people and giving them the information that they need to make an informed decision. And people will do business with you, not because you're the cheapest price in town, but because they like, know, and trust you. And they feel like that you appreciated them and that you respected them enough to communicate with them on more than just one level. Because to that point, you see this industry shifting to a lot of texting, right? video is a huge part of it as well. And I know in our business, Sean, and a lot of loan officers that we teach out there, we actually teach to sprinkle a little bit of everything and not just be a one-trick pony and just use the phone, because there's a lot of originators out there. I think the average loan officer's age in this industry is like 54, 52 or something. Last I checked, and I could be wrong on that, but it was a lot older age. That was the industry norm, like, or average for their age. And so, like, if you want to be relative to that millennial market, and that's a real live customer base that we have to like and love and trust and appreciate, these are ways to do it. It's not to just use the phone, but it's to embrace technology. I think that's so important. But it's communicating with people that they want to be communicated with.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people are scared of getting on social media or being active on social media for maybe compliance reasons or whatever. But as long as you are yourself and you're not quoting rates or getting into detail, which is not effective, that's not a social activity to do, then you're fine. And actually, I interviewed a guy that does legal counsel for a major mortgage company once, and he said that, you know, what regulators really want to see is that you are available and accessible to your customers. And that is, I mean, if you don't use social media, it's like not using the telephone. You're not being accessible and available.
That's funny. So what platforms, you know, like some of us are still stuck in the Stone Ages and use Facebook quite a bit. What platforms would you suggest on social media if we wanted to connect with millennials better that are best used?
Yeah, so Facebook still is pretty good. It kills me that everyone in my market, that all the loan officers and business people are all over Facebook, and I just want to be on Instagram. But that's the main platform where a lot of people are going, is Instagram. And what I like about that is that it does promote it. You know, with Facebook and a lot of other platforms, you're skimming content really, really quickly. And on Instagram, you still have that, but you have Instagram stories that allows people to have their attention captured for a full, you know, whether it's 2 seconds or 8 seconds, it's at least they're concentrated on your content for a moment in time. And it does promote that opportunity to be really authentic and for people to get to know you and how you advise people. So I think on a day-to-day basis, there's the kind of authentic storytelling through Instagram stories that allows you to either give quick tips or, you know, on financial readiness or something like that, or just, you know, behind the scenes type things like being at a cool open house or doing something cool at the office. Or I know one of you were talking about doing preparing for a race, but people want to get to know who you are as a person, and that's a really great platform for doing that. I would just be very cautious of posting anything that is not authentic. I mean, if you are posting graphics, make sure they are, I don't know, really well done. And I think that you just run the risk of looking salesy instead of looking like a person. And for millennials, we want to see a person and connect with a person. So definitely, you know, education forward, doing some videos and that kind of thing is really helpful. YouTube is still a great platform as well. I think it's best actually for directing people there as a resource. So you can say, like, go to my YouTube page to, you know, review Q&A, and then you can also if common questions come up about credit, for instance, you can send them that exact video, you know, but, and then Twitter is a mess, but it's still a really great platform for reaching millennials, and very much depends on your market and who you're reaching. But like in the Dallas area, it's still really effective. I'm currently in Atlanta, and it kind of depends on your area, but Snapchat is big as well, but I wouldn't recommend going into that because it's super personal. And so it's kind of like Instagram stories, where you have this short-lived content, but it becomes, I think, a little harder to reach more people. And so your time, I think, is a little bit limited there. I haven't seen people do it really effectively. But yeah, Facebook and Instagram, still great platforms to be on, and that's where I would start.
Yeah, it's AKA IG for those that don't know. If you hear IG, I'm just saying. So that was a terrible learning lesson for me.
Yeah, someone started talking about the gram once too, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Yeah. Cool. So you also teach people about plugging in and being a recognized leader.
Yeah.
That goes so much deeper than just, doing it for business purposes. And, whether somebody's looking at doing it to connect with millennials or you're passionate about something else. I mean, that's really when you were saying that and everything else that you said since then, that just goes so much into being authentic and being who you are. No matter what that circle is in your community that you want to plug into and that resonates with you, if you're doing something that you're passionate about and, of course, putting it on social media, then, people can truly see that who you are with it because it just comes so natural to you.
Yeah. So actually I'll be publishing an article about this soon, but there's a whole huge trend in what we call cause marketing or social impact marketing. But millennials and Gen Z will pay more for a product or service if they know it has a social impact. And there's tons of studies. There's one done recently that by Cone Communications that showed that 9 out of 10 millennials would switch brands for one that was aligned with a cause. And so, what that means for us and what that means for a lot of loan officers is that we want to see that you are actively involved in your community or aligning yourself with some kind of social impact or cause in your community. And it's a great way to open the door to new markets as well. If you're aligning yourself with a nonprofit or you are joining forces with a young professional organization or a company that's doing some volunteer work, that opens the door to a whole network and community of people, in addition to, like you said, posting that on social media in a very authentic way. You got to be really careful about how you do that, but make sure that you're saying like, hey, join me in supporting this cause and provide some education on it. Or, hey, so it was so great to work with X nonprofit and spotlight that nonprofit. But that's a very easy way to show you are someone who is who cares about the world around you, and that's the kind of company and individual that millennials want to work with.
That's a good point. Whenever you're talking about anyone or anything, make sure that you're making it about them and not about you, because nobody cares about you.
Yeah, it's about that authenticity, and the more that you promote others and bring value to the industry, the more, and you gotta be marketing that, definitely be someone who's bringing leadership always. And I think, just what you guys are doing right here is a perfect example of that. You're bringing leadership, bringing value, and people recognize that. And that's why they're going to trust you as a credible resource whenever it comes time for them to buy.
Awesome.
Love it. Kristin did pretty awesome, like coming to this podcast, not knowing it's going to be video recorded. So she whipped it together pretty quick.
Yes, that was a quick turnaround, but I'm always ready.
Well, thanks for joining us today. Hey, Kristin, if somebody wanted to reach out to you and connect and find more about what you do, how would they go about that?
Yeah, well, you can email me or go to our website, but my email is kristin@culturaloutreach.com. And we did just release or start our Instagram account, so you could follow us on Instagram at Cultural Outreach.
And just for those of you on there, so Kristin spells her name Kristin. There's a few different ways to spell Kristin as there is with Sean, so I just want to make sure that the ENs don't all of a sudden get all your email there.
Yeah, thank you. I should buy that one just in case.
You should have them all forward to the same spot. That would just be helpful for you, wouldn't
it? Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. And I hope that everyone, if anyone has additional questions after, I'm always happy to respond to those.
Well, thank you for your time. KT, as always, pleasure spending time with you. And next level loan officers and those that are interested in talking to us more, please reach out to us for your free strategy session. And we'll see you on the next podcast.